Good morning and welcome to another of MHP's lockdown sessions. I'm delighted to be here today with an old friend of mine, Sir Charles Bowman, a former partner of PwC and a former Lord Mayor of London. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning, Reg.
Clearly, lots of people are familiar with the Mayor of London, but I think they're probably less familiar with the Lord Mayor's role. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, let me start by saying it's a delight to be with you. And I should say it was a great honour to serve as the 690th Lord Mayor of the City of London. It's a year's tenure, and that year was a whirlwind of activity, often engaged in centuries-old city civic ceremony, gold coaches, tricorn hats, and pairs of 60 denier tights, but very much more often engaged in the modern role, acting as a key spokesperson and an ambassador for the UK's financial and professional services sector. And let's not forget, that is a sector that employs 2.3 million people nationwide, accounts for some 12% of GDP, homes and houses more international banks than any other global financial centre, and returns each year from financial services alone £76 billion of tax. That's 50% of our national healthcare budget, a sector that I often describe as a UK and a global jewel. And as Lord Mayor, one travels a lot, some 100 plus days abroad, promoting UK PLC and UK F&PS. I also visited key financial services cities across the UK, as well as welcoming many inward delegations to the city, visiting dignitaries and heads of state, etc. And as a Lord Mayor, one also sings for one's supper a lot, and I believe it's the biggest speaking role in the world. In fact, Dame Fiona Woolf, a predecessor Lord Mayor, she kept a log of the number of speeches she made, and it numbered more than 800. But, standing back from it, as I've often said, of the role of the Lord Mayor, it is that juxtaposition between the old and the new, a guardian of an historic and modern purpose, which when you set that alongside its political independence, makes the role both unique and an important and respected constant, particularly in this age of change. Indeed, a constant dating back 835 years.
Your theme of your mayoral term was the business of trust, and I was particularly interested in that in respect of the increasingly polarised world that we seem to all live in, particularly in current climes, having had Brexit and so on. So tell me a bit about the business of trust.
Yes, the business of trust was my mayoral theme, with its objective of helping to create a lasting legacy of better business trusted by society. And why trust? Because in 2018, 10 years after the global financial crisis, trust in financial services remained at an all-time low. We carried out research from which we developed 5 principles, the civic principles as we call them: competence, integrity, value to society, interests of other, and clear and transparent communication. And we took those principles with us wherever we went. One actually interesting observation amongst many arising from our work is that trust today means different things to different age groups. Almost all those surveyed over 30 years old chose integrity as their top principle, whereas those under 30 selected either value to society or clear and transparent communications. And where are we today? Well, look, after a year of unprecedented turbulence, COVID-19, economic crises, uncertainty, global outcry over racism, adversarial polarization, as you say, political uncertainty, and all of this combined with an epidemic of misinformation has fueled mistrust. And looking forward, perhaps 2 observations. Firstly, clear and transparent communication can and must play an important role to help slow the tide of misinformation and thereby help develop trustworthiness in this, as you call it, increasingly polarized world. And secondly, technology. The frame of reference has changed. A teenager growing up in our little Suffolk village 20 years ago might have gained their knowledge from their kitchen table, the school bus, the village shop, their grandparents, and perhaps a little bit from the newspaper, TV and radio. But today, that same said teenager needs only their mobile and Wi-Fi to access any amount of information. And worse or better still, they can then share their views across the world at the press of a button. I don't have all the answers, but what we must all recognize is that trust is a very precious asset. It is the cornerstone of all relationships and a very key ingredient to long-term sustainable success. And we should not forget that it arrives on foot and leaves on a galloping horse.
I also wanted to ask you about Brexit, which was obviously in full flight during your mayoral term. Now that we've come out of the EU, where do you see the prospects for the City of London and financial and professional services? Is it a real opportunity, in short?
Well, you're right. The constant mantra at the time of my mayoralty was that we would see business leave the city in its droves. Well, that didn't and that hasn't happened. We have lost a few jobs, but the reality is the numbers of those employed in the city has actually continued to grow, perhaps demonstrating London as a truly global hub and also its ability to innovate. Where are we today? Well, I'm pleased that we secured a deal with the EU, even though services and financial services were essentially excluded. And in relation to F&PS, well, that both sides now are working towards developing an MOU by the end of this month. And personally, well, I'm not holding my breath and I'm not assuming that we'll make much or significant headway. But that said, what is important is that we have a framework to help and keep the dialogue going. Because beyond the politics, the hard lines are not necessarily all in the interests of European consumers and customers, with the potential for increased cost, risk and fragmentation. Let me talk a little bit about regulation. London and the UK have always been a driving force behind financial and professional services regulation, and we should not give that position away. Our opportunity is one to focus on global standardization and helping to develop the global agenda. And secondly, around innovation, whether that's in fintech, green finance, cyber, and much, much more. And as the City of London Corporation put it in a recent report, we have in London a world-class ecosystem, a very vibrant offer, outstanding environments, and the best people and talent. So going forward, we need to harness these competitive advantage and nurture our innovative sector so that it does remain relevant in supporting the world as it returns to prosperity post-COVID and deals with the emerging issues of today.
And that leads me on to the kind of post-COVID, post-Brexit world in which international trade becomes ever more important. How do you see that progressing?
The UK has huge strengths in international trade. As a nation, we've always been a champion and advocate of free and fair trade. We stand 5th in the world in total exports and 2nd in the world in total service exports, with financial services having played a very significant part in that story. And there is arguably no more important time for the UK to embrace the importance and the opportunity of trade. Trade that creates prosperity, prosperity which provides social cohesion, stability and security for all. And for the first time in 40 years, we have the ability to set our own trade policy agenda and the opportunity to recast our role on the world stage, helping to shape free trade of the future with data and services at its core, and actually using our soft power to develop multilateralism and help influence organizations such as the WTO. And I was delighted to read that the recently launched integrated review includes a commitment to maintaining Britain's position as a global champion of free and fair trade. Two observations I made as Lord Mayor. Firstly, we shouldn't underestimate the importance of trade in supporting sustainable growth right the way across the UK. It is a key lever to help support levelling up. And secondly, the international view of the UK's competitiveness is far stronger than our own national confidence and self-belief. And at PwC, we've been carrying out a campaign, UK Trade, the New Agenda, with its focus on the importance of that mindset of opportunity that we must now adopt. So look, in summary, yes, I do think trade and investment is key, and we in the UK have an important opportunity given our new status in the post-Brexit, post-COVID world.
International travel kind of goes hand in hand with international trade, and clearly that's something that's going to have to kind of restart post-COVID. Tell us about how you see that, the importance of international travel in kickstarting post-COVID recovery.
Yes, you're right. I did travel a lot, visiting, in fact, all continents except Antarctica and 29 countries in total. And that program is a very powerful program. We work closely with all our stakeholders and with government, including FCDO, DIT, HMT, and the Cabinet Office, essentially to develop and agree a joined up strategy of where, what, and for what reason and what outcome. And our visits focused on trade and policy activity. And generally, I would take a delegation with me, by way of example, to Australia in 2018, early 2018. I took a team of 12, almost all from the fintech sector. And it followed shortly after the Ashes series, which, Reg, I know you will know, we lost rather badly. And the delegation quickly became known as the Lord Mayor's cricket team, not least because through this well-planned and executed trip to Sydney, Canberra and Melbourne, all members of the delegation scored runs, doing business for their companies and for the sector more widely. And also on that trip, we were able to influence Scott Morrison, the then Treasurer, as to the importance of a fintech bridge between our two great countries, which I'm pleased to say was signed a few weeks later. But it was not only international travel. As I mentioned earlier, our F&PS sector is a national jewel with 2/3 employed outside of London. And the City of London Corp does recognise the importance of a strategy that promotes F&PS right the way across the nation. So I also travelled a lot within the UK to many other of our centres of excellence, including Glasgow, Edinburgh, Belfast, Manchester, Leeds and Cambridge.
You had a long career at PricewaterhouseCoopers, long and distinguished career at PricewaterhouseCoopers. My clients wouldn't forgive me if I didn't ask you about the current state of the audit world. What are your observations on the current situation?
Well, I've not been auditing for a little while, but 3 points perhaps I would make. And notwithstanding recent and well publicised negative stories of audit, we actually shouldn't underestimate the importance of high quality audit. The capital market cannot survive without audit. Secondly, auditors and auditees have been coping very well during COVID, preparing increasingly complex corporate reporting and then auditing that in a virtual environment has not been straightforward, particularly when you overlay some of the uncertainty caused by the pandemic and its impact on, whether it's asset valuations, viability, and the going concern of many businesses. It's not been easy for auditors nor auditees. And thirdly, and very importantly, audit is on a journey. The profession, the Big Four, and all audit firms must, and indeed are, investing significantly in audit quality and related governance. And alongside this, there have been 3 recent and separate reviews of the profession, Kingman, CMA and Bryden, and now the consolidated recommendations in the very recently issued Bayes consultation named Restoring Trust in Audit and Corporate Governance. And in reality, as the name says, this consultation is much wider than simply audit reform, with a focus on corporate governance and reporting reform, covering the responsibilities of investors, directors, companies and regulators, as well as auditors. And if we stand back from these Bayes recommendations, they should provide the UK with an opportunity in a post-Brexit, post-COVID world to lead the way again and set the new global benchmark. And in so doing, underpin our UK reputation as a most trusted environment to raise capital and do good business.
How do you see the future, again, as we come out of COVID, as the light at the end of the tunnel? Can London retain its position? Can the UK retain its position as a leading global financial centre?
My short answer would be yes. I was asked that question constantly as Lord Mayor, facing at that time the headwinds of Brexit. And whilst I'm not complacent and wasn't then, I was confident at that moment in time and indeed remain confident today. London is a unique and a global cluster. Within walking distance, you can find everything and everyone you may ever need in F&PS. It really is a one-stop shop. And it is and always has been a great centre for innovation. Indeed, previous research has pointed London's success to its creative energy. And today, through its recovery task force, the City of London has been focusing on this and more, with an excellent programme to ensure that the Square Mile does remain the world's most innovative, inclusive and sustainable business ecosystem, and an attractive place to invest, work, live and visit. And that is an ecosystem that's underpinned by a series of fundamentals. And if I may, Reg, I'm going to list the 16 that I often refer to and continue to refer to. And those are our rule of law, our history, our culture, access and breadth of talent, diversity, education, innovation, regulation, infrastructure, taxation, time zone, language, security, probity, and a great place to live and a great place to work. And these fundamentals are fueling the creative energy and the innovation that we see today, whether in fintech, green finance, AI, cyber, and in many other areas. They are hard to replicate. If they could, they would. Hitherto, they haven't. And so long as we are not complacent, then I don't believe that they will.
Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning, Charles. And I look forward to seeing you in person at some point during the summer, and hopefully a successful cricketing summer at that.
It's been a great pleasure, Reg. Very good to see you and look forward to seeing you in person soon.